In this tutorial, I will be taking you through how to create a 3D printed cookie cutter file using Adobe Photoshop and Adobe Illustrator. And this is the image that I will be using. So what I will need to do is actually do an image trace. So to do that, I click on the image trace drop down, and because it's black and white, I will choose black and white logo. And when I click this, the image trace will automatically take place. Once the image trace is finished, if you look over on your layers panel, at the moment there is only one sub layer. When we press the expand after our image trace, now we have another drop down in our layers and we have all of the letters on separate layers. Now we want to get rid of all of those, and the only layer that we want to keep is our shark layer. And the easiest way to do that is to click on the first layer, hold your shift key and click on the last layer, and that selects everything. Now we need to keep our shark layer, so if I press my control key and click on that layer, it deselects. So click on the selected area, drag it down into the rubbish bin, and then we have just our one layer of our shark. I need to change the size of the cutter. I want the longest edge to be 100 millimeters. So if you go into your transform panel, click on that. Now the things we need to be looking at here is we need to make sure that this link is active, and we're going to be looking at our width and our height value. Using the largest value, I'm going to change that to 100 millimeters. And because I have that link active, when I press enter, both sides will change equally. Now I have the size that I want. I need to change it into a path. In window, click on Pathfinder. We want the outline, so click on that. Now we have the outline. Now I need two of these layers, so click on the layer, drag it into our new layer, and there's our duplicate. Double click on the layer and rename it. Bottom one I shall call base, and the top one I shall call cutter. Make sure that the layer is selected. With that selected, I go into stroke, and in my cutter I want to change that stroke to 0.75 millimeters. I also want to go into object and expand. Uncheck fill, click OK. That is our cutter layer done. Now we go into our base layer, into stroke, and I want this stroke to be 6 millimeters. And I go into object, expand, uncheck fill, and OK. They are my layers done in Illustrator. The next step will be processed through Photoshop. Now the cutter that I have created in Illustrator, if I make my document 120 mil on each side, and I'm going to change the resolution to 300, I'll leave it as RGB color, click create. Now I have my blank document. If I go into my window, I'm going to need my layers panel, I'm going to need my 3D panel, and I'll just dock it in there, and I'm going to need my properties panel. So back into layers. Now when it opens up, we have one background layer. What I actually need is two transparent layers. So I'll click on the create new layer button down the bottom, 1, 2, and then I can click and drag the background layer into the bin, and now I'm left with transparent layers, and I will name those base and cutter. Now control V, we're going to paste as a path, control V on the base layer, paste as a path, select the cutter layer, go back to our Illustrator file, make sure that that layer is selected. Control C to copy, Control V to paste. Paste as a path. And there's our two documents ready to go. Now for this, I might actually pop the properties over here so we can see it as we go along. We have to make sure that our path is actually selected. Just selecting the layer won't work. We need to make sure that that path is also selected. So we'll start with the cutter, go into 3D. We need to choose our source as the work path, 3D extrusion, and then click create. And there is our cutter. Now I want the extrusion depth to be 18 millimeters. And then we go back to our layer and we select the base, back to 3D panel, work path, 3D extrusion, create. Now for this one, I want the extrusion depth to be 2 millimeters. And there we go. Now back to our layers. I can see that these have been converted into, I'll just pop this out of the way, 3D. So I need to select both of those, and now we're going to merge those layers. So we go to our 3D menu, merge 3D layers. Now in our layers panel we only have one layer because they have been merged, and we can see them together here. So I go into the 3D panel, there is our base layer and there is our cutter layer. Go into your base, pull the properties out again so you can see it. In our properties panel we're looking for coordinates. So click on your coordinates and we need to change the angle to 90 degrees, and we need to change our X, Y and Z position to 0. Once that is done, you can move that to ground and go into your cutter and do the same thing. So 90 degrees, and the position is 0, 0 and 0, and move to ground. Pop this out of the way, and that is our cookie cutter. So if we go back into our 3D panel, now this is very important, you need to click on scene, and that technically you need to click on scene, and that will allow you to move this around and see your cookie cutter. If you don't press scene, the layers will move individually. So from there, go back into properties, click on the star to the left here, which is your mesh, click on that, and then click on the 3D print settings. So click there. For our print settings, print to local, STL file, millimeters and medium. Down the bottom here we have a start print button. Click that. Once that's done, we can see it here in our preview, and then click export, and we're going to call this Shark Print. Save. When I go into that document, there's my file, my 3D object. If I double click on that, I hope you've learnt something useful through this lesson. Thanks for watching.